Welcome to the Larry Rinker Golf Podcast, your place for tour-proven conversations, world-class instruction, and real results. I'm your host, Larry Rinker. My guest today is from Frederick, Maryland, has won over $4 million on the PGA Tour with 2 victories at the Bob Hope Classic and the Texas Open. He won the Tour School in 1982 by still a record of 14 strokes and could have shot 103 in the final round, still qualified for the Tour. He is a charter member of the Jacksonville University Sports Hall of Fame and is currently doing real estate in golf course communities here in Central Florida. Please welcome my very good friend Donnie Hammond to the show. How you doing, Donnie?
Doing good, Larry. Congratulations on the new podcast. Sure, it's going to be great.
Well, thank you. What's new and exciting?
Started working on my game a little bit. I think I'm going to do a few qualifiers. Going to go up to Jacksonville for Jim Furyk's Champions Tour event up there. The qualifier is at the TPC Valley, which I know pretty well. And then the next week is up in Raleigh for the SAS. So I haven't played a lot of tournaments this year, but with this at the end of the year, I thought let's dust the old clubs off and see if I can go out and shoot a couple under and maybe get in a tournament.
Well, Dick Mast is in his mid-70s and still open qualifying for Champions Tour events. So you at 68, you can do it too.
I'll try. Yeah, the enthusiasm he has is unbelievable, isn't it? He's still giving it a go, and he still plays good.
He does. I mean, he was king of the mini tours, won all those tournaments here in Orlando, and he's just been someone that has continued to play, and somehow his name just keeps popping up in tournaments.
Yeah, he hits it long too. He still hits it 280, 285
wow.
Probably.
Wow. How's your club head speed these days?
Well, I'm clocking about 103 on a good day if I get out and stretch a little bit, which I think from the days we played, I'm still hitting it about 275, and I don't even think we hit it that far when we were on the tour.
No, I think I maybe could have carried it 260, probably had about 105 mile an hour club head speed with an old wooden driver. And so with some rollout, I was happy if I got it 275, 280. But yeah, the equipment today, it's pretty amazing with the metallurgists, what they've done with the heads, and then also the shaft is so important, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, now the guys are playing 50, 55, 60 gram shafts. So, you add that to a 45-inch club, it's going to give you, a lot more speed. You can keep it up there around 103, 105 mile an hour at our age.
Yeah, and that's fast enough for you to still be able to compete. I know there's some guys out there that still hit a long way, Ernie Els and Darren Clark and some of those guys, they're still getting it up there, probably close to 115 club head speed, which is about tour average. But hey, every hole ends in a putt, and who knows, you might find some lightning up there in Jacksonville. In 1986, you won for the first time at the Bob Hope Classic in a playoff. How many birdies did you make coming down the stretch that Sunday at Bermuda Dunes?
Down the stretch, I think I made 5, maybe on the back 9, but I think the big one was on 17, but par 3 there at Bermuda Dunes. Long hole, 210 yards maybe. And 2-iron is not what you want to hit coming down the stretch, needing to make birdies. But somehow I pulled it right at the flag, and it ended up about 8 feet. I made that one, and then I caught a little bit of a break on 18, the par 5 that kind of goes up the hill. My chip shot, I kind of hit it just a touch heavy, but it hit right on the collar and scooted forward, and I was worried because I thought it was going to be past the hole, but it ended up rolling up about 8 inches from the hole. And so that little bit of a break got me to 25 under. John Cook was playing right behind me, hits it on the green, has a 30-footer for eagle to win the tournament, rolls it down, tap in, and off to the playoff we go. And then I birdied the first hole in the playoff and got my first win.
Was that 16 or 17?
That was 14. It was
14.
Right off the putting green right there where the tee is. right off the putting green, so it was just a walk down the hill to the tee. And
It was
luckily,
kind of interesting. In those days, they didn't necessarily go to 18 like they do all the time now with all the stadium seating on 18. They would go somewhere else, 16, 14, and that was pretty convenient to just roll over there to 14. So you make all these birdies, you birdie the first playoff hole, and you're a PGA Tour winner and get to play with Bob Hope the next year.
played with Bob Hope and President Ford, Tip O'Neill, the old Speaker of the House. That was pretty exciting. And then President Ford invited me to play in his tournament up in Vail in the summertime. Got to play there about 10 years, and that was just a great time.
Well, I think you won that tournament 3 times up there in Vail, didn't you?
Yeah, tied for first, which they didn't have playoffs because the next week we were playing the international, so they just declared you champion if you tied. So, but that was just a great time up there playing 36 holes up in the mountains, which you spent a lot of time up there in Vail. You know how nice that is up there.
Oh, especially in the summertime. Yeah, I spent 12 summers at Red Sky up there just west of Vail and Walcott in the Vail Valley, and it's just beautiful this time of year. In September, the leaves are turning, and so you can tell fall's almost in the air out there. Still a little warm here in Florida, but it's football season. You've been playing some golf with Gabe Davis, who was recently announced he's going back to the Buffalo Bills. And how's his golf game?
Well, Gabe's going to need a few lessons. I'm going to send him down your way because he's a lefty. He loves the game. I mean, he's got a great physique to play golf. You know, tall, 6'3" or so, strong as an ox. But he hits a little over the top, and he hits a little bit of a fade. So I tried to get him to come a little more from the inside and use his power. So I'm going to try to get him down your way and get him where he doesn't have much spin on the ball, and he'll be hitting it over 300 when he gets that like that.
You know, it's amazing, Donnie, when somebody gets a little over the top of the plane, and as a lefty, he's swinging too far to the right. As a right-hander, he'd be swinging too far left. How if we get that path straighter and they square the club face, they will be hitting more up on the ball. And if you've got 90 miles an hour club head speed, which is kind of average for a male, you could pick up 20, 30 yards just by getting your path better and hitting up on the ball more.
Yeah, I mean that spin, you know the shot. If you catch it in the heel with the driver, it's going to find the fairway, but you're going to lose about 15 yards as if you don't hit it square and it has no spin on it. So that's the key for amateurs, I think, is to lessen their side spin. Whether it's mostly the fade is what hurts the distance.
So you win the Bob Hope Classic in '86. Now, just a few months later, you're in the Masters. 1986, the famous one where Jack Nicklaus won his 6-green jacket. And you played well the first round, didn't you?
Yeah, I started out pretty well the first day. I think I chipped in on 11 and 12. I hit it right of the green on 12, the par 3, and chipped it in again, I think to get back to even or 1 under, and then posted a decent round. Second day, I made the cut, which was kind of a goal of mine, but I came in there playing pretty well. Thought I had a chance to have a good tournament there. But then the third day, I think it was lift clean in place that day. I shot 67.
Wow.
That's the day Nick Price lifted out on 18 for 62. That was for 62, and it kind of did a horseshoe around the hole in 18. But I shoot 67, and then I find myself in the next to last group, 1 shot back going into Sunday.
Wow. What was that like? Were you a little nervous on that
It was
first
great
tee?
until I got to the first tee on Sunday, and the people are 5 feet from you, and you're teeing it up, and you're looking down, and the patrons are right there, and they're behind you, and they're right here, and you look out in the fairway, and here you have a chance to win the tournament. When I was shaving that morning, I was looking at myself saying, right there's your winner of the '86 Masters. And I got on the first tee, and I could feel my right knee kind of shimmying just a little bit. I'm like, I don't remember that as part of my swing routine. And I thought, well, maybe I'm not going to win if I can't control this little shimmy. But it was a great day. I mean, to be on the course that day and hear, the roars. And once Jack's name got up on the leaderboard and you saw where he was, then you kind of knew where he was on the golf course, and you could hear, the eagle on 15. I might have been on 13 then, but you could hear him stiff it on 16. And it was kind of like I was like one or two over, just trying to bring it back and get back into the tournament a little bit. But it was electric out there on the course, and then it was just amazing to watch it, several weeks later to see what actually happened.
You had to be pretty close when he made that birdie on 17.
Yeah, I think I was over, I must have been around 15 right then.
Yeah.
I was almost close enough to hear Vern say, "Yes, sir." But it was quite a day on the course. I think I finished 11th, though. I had a good tournament and got, finished high enough to get invited back the next year. So it wasn't a total failure on Sunday, not being right there and contending. But that would have been a real thrill to kind of be going up against Jack the last 3 or 4 holes.
Which major is your favorite?
I think showing up at Augusta was my favorite, but definitely my second favorite was the Open Championship over in where we played a couple times in Scotland or England. Got to play 5 times over there and had a couple good tournaments at St. Andrews, finished 8th, and then Muirfield, I finished 5th one year. But just being over there in the summertime with the bounces, the weather, the elements that you have to deal with, and then you see some different faces, and you have to play completely different golf over there, as you know. You got to flight it down a little bit. A lot of different elements to work with over there.
It was a lot different back when you and I were playing over there in the late 80s, early 90s, in that we didn't get to see as many of the foreign players on our tour like they do today. And so we saw people we'd never seen before. And I remember 1992, there was a young, tall, reddish-haired kid from South Africa named Ernie Els. And I remember seeing that swing on the range. And I just thought, oh my goodness, who is this?
I did the same thing. I was with Phil Ritson, I think Saturday, and I said, "Phil, let's stop 1 second here. I want to watch this guy Ernie hit a couple shots." And Ernie, he's got the club up there like Davis Love at the top of his swing. Unbelievable power. Back then he was hitting at 310 at least. And I looked at Phil. I said, "What are we going to do now, Phil, when we're going to start competing against this guy?" And he was only, what was he, maybe 22 then?
Yeah, he had to be young. That was 1992. I mean, that was 33 years ago. Yeah, he was in his early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he turned out pretty good.
Yeah, 4 majors, Hall of Famer,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of worldwide wins. So, Donnie, you and I both worked with a lot of different teachers through the years. You mentioned Phil Ritson from South Africa. You worked a lot with him. What were some of the things you worked on with him?
With Phil, I met Phil up at Augusta one year, and I was hitting a little bit too much of a draw. And, you get on those greens at Augusta, you get a shot coming in, and it's drawing maybe 6-7 yards with an 8-iron. When it hits the green, starts spinning left, and it's hard to keep it on those certain parts of the green, with that much spin. And so we tried to straighten out the flight a little bit, because he not only knew the swing as well as anyone, but he knew that course pretty well. And he knew you had to have, those irons, those wedges coming in without that side spin, because you need to keep it on certain parts. So what we worked on was keeping the club a little more out in front of me on the backswing, not kind of whipping it behind. So I would take it a little bit more outside, which in turn, I could hit a little more of the outside of the ball. And, I started working on it early in the week, and luckily, it kicked in pretty good. And I thought, this is going to allow me to, play a lot lot better in the future. So Phil and I started working for 3 or 4 years after that. And he traveled with me a lot overseas and certain places.
So let's take a look at some swings of yours, Donnie.
Do we have to?
Yeah, we have to. Here's one from 10 years ago. Caught you a little late. You always like looking at a little bit of an open club face at address, which is okay. I do it too. And you can see you make a pretty big turn and kind of pivot around the front, your left leg there. And then now, and you get a little bit of a, what we'd call a counter swivel. And I think that's something you always kind of worked on because you can see at address here that you have your tilt, you've got more tilt at the top of your swing, don't you?
Yeah. That's when I kind of started going more when I was working with Gary McCord, where I was taking the club a little more inside. And that caused me, I think, to sway off the. You see how I sway back a little bit? You and I worked on that when I came to you for help.
Yeah, we tried to get the upper body not to go so far back towards your right foot. See, your head's outside the circle, and and your tilts, you've gotten, what some might call a swivel tilt. So your upper body's not staying in the tilt you had at address. But what's interesting is you might think someone would be flat with that counter swivel, but you actually set the club early. I think this is one of the things you worked with Phil on is keeping the hands low and getting that club set earlier. And you can see there's that club a little outside going back like you talked about.
Yeah, little upright there. It's kind of not laid off like
No.
maybe would be more optimum. But then see how it kind of rotates a little bit
And
where I
then
kind
you
of flatten it
shallow it
out.
and get it right on plane coming down and maybe slightly under it. So now you make from the top, you make this beautiful shift, and you've always rotated your body a lot in your golf swing. And now here you come down, and then there's impact right there.
But with my
With
head moving back, I remember at that point when I was playing, when I was swaying off the ball that little bit, that was a little too much really to make me super competitive because I had my timing had to be just perfect to get the shots online, as if you weren't right on top of the ball. So
right.
it took a few tricks to be able to play well like that.
Well, what's interesting is when you return and come back to impact, you're pretty much right where you want to be at impact. So, the interesting thing is there's a lot of ways to hit a golf ball, but when you get back to impact, your head's in the circle, your tilts, you've got a little bit more tilt at impact, which all good players have. Your left shoulder just a slightly higher, and then there you are square in the face going through. Beautifully supported swing.
Yeah,
You've
kind of a
always
low fit.
had you've always had your own move, Bone. You've
Yeah,
always had it.
yeah.
And I think it's interesting how, we all try to change what we do naturally. And I think what we really should have done more of is tweaked what we do naturally to just make it a little better, not feel like we were trying to reinvent ourselves.
Well, we had so many great teachers that would be on the ranges, and we're always looking for that little edge to try to get ahead. We weren't, superstars. We were trying to make ourselves a little better. And whether you run into Jim McLean or Phil Ritson or Gary McCord, who, those guys were out there willing to help, and we were always looking for a little something. So you're right. As you look back, though, that would have probably been a better way to do it, is build on what you had and try to make that a little better.
And we seem to see the guys that have nice sustained careers, they kind of stay with the same coach. Like we see Scotty Scheffler's been working with Randy Smith since he was like 10 years old. And you just see certain players that they've got that coach and they stay with that coach. I've always said if I would have stayed with Bob Toski my whole career, I probably would have had a better career. But I wandered and worked with a lot of different people and different things, and I learned from them. It helps me now as a teacher
Yeah.
today, but back then Sometimes, as Bob Tosky would say, analysis leads to paralysis.
He knows as well as anyone. The cool thing these days is you watch some of the footwork, Justin Thomas, where he's coming off the ground. Some of these young guys that are hitting it, 320, and of course Scotty Scheffler. You look at his footwork. Now some of the younger players are thinking, well, you don't necessarily have to finish on balance or have perfect footwork to be number one player in the world.
No, you don't. And if I show you Justin Thomas, you're talking about it. Here he is, and we've got pressure mat on the right-hand side showing things. But you're going to see this guy really get vertical. Look at him jump. There he is.
Look at the right foot.
Look at the right foot. But his left foot in one of these frames is almost off the ground there. You can see down here at the bottom of the screen, only 7% in his left foot. Well, that's because he's pretty much left the ground. Here's the pressure on the left foot, and he's basically almost levitated. And we just see this. It's a lot of vertical ground reaction force. He's mid-core, so he's going to rotate into a pretty good jump. And that's what a mid-core player would do. A Jordan Spieth is going to be more in his left heel at impact, so he's not going to be able to jump. You can't jump out of your left heel. So low core players get more rotated. And I really think, Donnie, in your prime, I think that you were really rotated at impact, back in the 80s. You can see you're pretty rotated right here at impact in this video. So you probably would have been what someone would say is low core back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like Justin Thomas. So we were talking about keeping the club out in front of you. I mean, that's why his wedge game is so tight though, because he doesn't bring it back behind him, like a classic Ricky Fowler swing. He keeps it out in front of him so well. And when those wedges come in, they hit, take a bounce, and pretty much check, right where they hit, not spinning around left or spinning to the right.
When he and his father won the PNC championship here in Orlando at the Ritz-Carlton Golf Club, he had a lot of feely shots with his wedges. And he's pretty amazing with those off-speed wedges where they're not full.
Mm-hmm.
He really can dial those in. And I've always believed that the rhythm in your swing is with your arms. That's what Tosky taught me, in your arm swing. There are players like a Nick Faldo, they feel the rhythm in their pivot. But for me, I feel it in my arm swing. So I can make my arms a certain speed, and then I can make my arms go faster. And it's just amazing how Justin Thomas can dial that in and really control his distance with his wedges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's more of a shoulder. You like to use your forearms and let the club swing past you. And I like that because especially on the short game, the shots that you're able to hit where you let the club go past you a little bit, you can just tailor that and bring it into your long game. And that's how you can control the distance when you get that when you get in between clubs.
Don't you think, Donnie, that when we were growing up and playing college golf, and even when we got on tour, that when we hit pitch shots around the green, we really just felt like we set up with an open stance and club face and made a little miniature swing. We weren't trying to do anything different, were we? We just felt like we were just making a little swing.
Well, we were thinking a lot less about our technique back, when we're in college, because coming out of playing in high school, I'm sure your short game was absolutely amazing in high school. I remember playing with you in college, and you had one of the best short games, and of course you carried it on tour. But I think we were thinking of a lot less things because we were younger and weren't exposed to so many more techniques when we got out on tour.
I find a lot of people that have been good players and have been playing golf all their life and played high school golf and didn't think about their short game. And then they started studying this stuff, and the next thing they knew, their short game was a mess. And now they don't know how to get back because they just used to do it intuitively. They just would set up, look at it, and they kind of knew what the volume needed to be on their swing to hit it the correct distance. And now all of a sudden they're chunking it and blading it, and they just don't know what they're doing. But as you say, they're overthinking. And so what's really cool about short game is we have a way to figure out what's going on. And there's a good steep, there's a good neutral, and there's a good shallow. And so the shallow and the steep cancel out. So the good neutral is the club goes pretty straight back, it's on plane. The good shallow is you throw, that's kind of that upper core little earlier release. And the good steep is the weight flows into your front foot. So if you have those three components, you're pretty good.
Hmm.
But then you got people saying hold angles and that's a bad steep, and then they back out of it to shallow it out, and now they wonder why they're only successful 2 or 3 out of 10 times, and they can't figure it out. I had a lesson with a friend yesterday, Craig DeLonge, and he was taking the just swinging two in to out, and we got the club more on plane and got him releasing it more. And a lot of times, the answer of what he needs to do is pretty simple.
Yeah, in the short game, with that pitching and chipping, I always had more success and bunker shots is having the club start a little on the outside. Even if I like to, parlay my short game with my long swing, but on the, whenever I'd be swinging inside with the full swing, I would still try to take the club a little more outside with a 56 degree where you're coming down a little more square on the ball versus, you chip out a long rough. You don't want to be coming in from the inside. You want to have it more directly, a little more descending.
Yeah, well, you get that club a little above the plane coming into the ball, it's steeper. If you're coming from under the plane into the ball, especially out of rough, you're too shallow. You're not steep enough. And see, we want to get steep by our weight being in our front foot, and then we get shallow with the throw. You don't want to play shots out of the rough with a lot of forward shaft lean. Because if you play it back and lean the shaft a lot out of the rough, you're either going to catch a flyer, you're going to hit it about right, or you're going to chunk it. There's no consistency to it. But when you play with the shaft more straight up and down, and you got bounce in the wedge, all of a sudden the sharp leaning edge isn't grabbing, and you get the club head passing where it should. And now all of a sudden there's a consistency the way the ball comes out of the rough.
Yeah, and that's what the guys are experts at these days on tour, where you see the flop shot. And we didn't see that a whole lot in the 80s, early 90s, where guys would hit the Tiger Woods flop or Justin Thomas flop. You open that sand wedge up and you just almost take a full swing. There was a lot less of that back when we played, but now the guys they're experts, and you can see where the club head goes through. It's like neutral from where the butt of the club is. It's not where the butt is way ahead, like you're talking about. You're throwing the club head, and it's so much easier to get a little consistency when you're doing that.
Well, the best I ever saw with a sandwich in his hand was Seve Ballesteros, so we certainly got to see him. And then there was a guy named Phil Rogers who won on the PGA Tour, was Jack Nicklaus's short game coach. And we used to play and practice out at Grand Cypress. He would come in and do these schools. Do you think I ever said, "Hey, Phil, watch me hit some shots"? But I remember seeing him getting his students to use their hands and throw it more. I'm like, no, you don't want to do that. So that was one teacher I should have gone and seen because he was pretty genius and he helped Jack Nicklaus's short game and also others. And guess who his mentor was? Paul Runyon. Paul
Oh,
Runyon, Little Poison. And I read his book when I was a teenager, Paul Runyon's short game book. So he really, as far as we can go back to him, probably in the 50s, he, goes back to their great short game.
yeah, and Phil was great with Jack, where I think he started the trend. When you chip from off the green with an 8 iron or a pitching wedge, you would be real vertical, real
Right.
upright, and that's where
Like a
Jack got
putt
in with
grip
his
and
putting
close
grip.
to it.
Yeah, and you
That
almost
was
like you.
Paul Runyon. That
Oh,
was
that
the
was from
Runyon.
Runyon.
Yeah, my brother and sister, all of us, we just felt like whenever we hit that shot, we go, "Oh, it's a Runyon." I call it a putt chip now because okay, it's a putting grip. Chip's a low trajectory shot that runs, so I call it that. But we all stole it from Paul Runyon.
Well, we have Rinker pars too that we've used for years. When you would make an unbelievable up and down, another Rinker par. There we go.
Well, I had a lot of opportunities for that because I was hitting it so poorly. I really lost my swing and, that third hole interlock, and I would tend to hit it in the pond there to the right.
Remember a few splash downs over there.
But now that I figured out I'm upper core and I'm not trying to swing like a mid-core player, I can hit the ball again. So, it's interesting. I think people have to find their golf swings. But yeah, I did make some pretty incredible up and downs playing with you and DeMarco and Fulton and Freddie Gibson. I remember that one day, Freddie's like, okay, we're going to have a game today. And I said, no, I'm not playing very well. And then I thought, no, I'm not playing poor enough. I'm not having a game with you, Freddie.
Remember
Yeah,
that? Yeah.
yeah,
I'm
we're
not playing
having
bad
a
enough where I
match
can't play
today.
you, Freddie. You're
I'm
10
not
years
going
older.
that low. Okay.
That's right.
What's the best tip you ever got?
Best tip? Let's see. I think the best tip probably, I think it probably, it's maybe a tie. I mean, we worked together for a while and we played together and you always were helpful with me on a lot of different shots when we were playing the tour before you even started teaching. And that helped a lot over the years. A couple of the tips I got from instructors was that Phil was keeping the club out a little this way where you could hit it, you could hit it as hard as you want and not have it spin too much to the left. And then several years after that, I went to Gary McCord. He caught me or I caught him on the range at Memphis, and I started swinging that kind of that Mac swing, where you narrow your stance a little bit, you kind of just roll it back. And I had probably the best golf of my career, maybe 4 or 5 months after that, where I won Texas by 7. Started kicking in pretty good at the end of the year. I think we had dinner that year one night at the Italian place where this
Right.
acorn dropped and landed right in my soup, and we started laughing and won that one by 7. And then the next week I finished second at Disney and then fifth at the tour championship. But it was
Yeah.
just kind of automatic where I didn't even have to think of my swing that much. It was just a little more rolling it inside. But that was almost the opposite of what I was working with on Phil. So
Right.
it's kind of weird where you could be doing two different things.
Yeah, that win and the second place pole vaulted you into the tour championship. You finished fifth, and then the tour ends.
Yeah.
Golly, you're on a roll, and you got to wait 2 months to come back to your next event. But speaking of rolling, you rolled up in a nice white Ferrari to my charity golf event December after that run too.
Yeah, it was a tight window where I had the opportunity to had a few dollars in the bank to go get one.
Yeah, you were always a car guy. You always liked messing around with that. What would you say was the best part of your game when you were on tour?
Uh, I think I think when I would get on a roll is just to be able to kind of use a little momentum. It wasn't really like the iron play. It was, I could get a stretch where I could go 5 or 6 under for 12 or 13 holes, and then if I would make a bogey, it would almost like shut down the roll immediately. But for that 12 or 14 holes, I was able to log a couple, a couple under there and kind of get up on the leaderboard a little bit. So I think it was momentum one way or another. And if I started going the other way, it was hard to get out. Where if you make a couple bogeys, then you think, okay, I wonder what I'm going to do this weekend after I miss the cut. But it was that I didn't really have a super strong point. But the weeks that I did play well on tour, it was usually the driving. I think I would drive the ball pretty consistently. I had a couple good tournaments at the World Series up there at Firestone, and you have to drive it around that golf course. But it seems like both years I played there, I was coming in driving the ball really well, and it just made success a lot easier on that course. So I would say certain weeks when I was driving it well, I would have a pretty good tournament.
Well, you had a real knack when you got it going to go low. And I'll never forget the tour school in 1982. You said before you said before the first round that you want to play well enough that you can shoot 87 the last round and still make it. Well, you beat that by 16 shots. You could have shot 103. And I think you opened with rounds of 65, 67. And I don't know how big a lead you had then, but you just left us. I mean, it was, and you didn't even play that great on Sunday. You could have won by more on the sixth round, but wow, that was just something there that showed the world that when Donnie Hammond gets hot, he can go low.
That was, yeah, I was always trying to figure out what exactly was going on that week because, yeah, after 4 rounds, I had a 14 stroke lead, which was a great cushion around TPC because there
Yeah.
was just, disaster everywhere. I mean, there were, the palmetto bushes were a lot more abundant on that course now than they are, when you play now. I mean, back when we played, it was a lot tougher course.
So you've played in a lot of pro-ams over the years. What's the most common mistake that you see amateur golfers make?
I think it seems like when they get to the top, they just throw it from the top and they come over the top, kind of swing left a few degrees, 2, 3, 4 degrees to the left, hit this big high cut, and they're losing a lot of distance. And then they end up, aiming more left to try to balance that. So when they hit this big slice, it's kind of going to be on line, which makes them swing even more to the left. So
Right.
that's the one thing when I used to teach, I would try to get them going down the line a little more and get that path. Now we use the alignment sticks, but that's a hard thing to get over when you've been swinging over the top for several years. What's what do you do with someone like that where they're coming over the top? What's the best way to get them out of that?
Well, to me, the reason they do it is they're turning early from the top with their hips or their shoulders. And when you turn early, your hands in the club go right out toward the target line, toward the ball. And in that moment, you're in trouble. I mean, the damage is done right there. And now it's just damage control trying to find the ball. And so I get them trying to keep their back at the targets longer. That's what something Jack Nicklaus talked about. And I do drills where I have them set up with a closed stance. If they're a right-hander, they've got their feet pointing way to the right. Well, I've contorted their body where they can't rotate it. And now they've got to have this club coming down more from the inside. And now they let their arm swing turn their chest. And all of a sudden, they've got the club on plane. And now they really are understanding, well, not only do I have to swing more in to out, but I now have to rotate my arms and hands and close this face more. Because when a right-hander is swinging too far left with the face open, to fix it, they got to swing more to the right and close the face more. You've got to do two things. So two things are causing that slice, and I've got to change two things. And it's always interesting. What do you fix first, the face or the path? And I'd rather see somebody get the one of them correct. So if they get the face and they're still swinging left as a right-hander, at least now they're squaring the face more and hitting the ball left. And if they start doing that, then maybe they might have a little more courage to swing out to the right. But it's tough because you have to swing towards your fear. Your fear is when you're slicing it, you're going to miss it to the right. And you're telling me I got to swing more to the right?
Now you're going to aim
Yes.
right. Yeah,
You've
that's
got to
that's
swing toward your fear. And it's golf's a game of opposites. Sometimes we got to swing right to make a ball go left, and we got to swing left to make a ball go to the right. We got to hit down to make the ball go up. So golf is a game of opposites, and it's just a matter of showing video and showing them where they're at, and get you just got to get them a feel of getting that club more in the slot, as we say. And then now they learn how to use their arms, hands, and wrists to square the club face.
but it's great feedback when they do hit one and it starts out to the right a little bit and they're able to do that for 2 or 3 shots consistently, then they know they're on the right path. And even if it doesn't come back to the left, at least if it starts to the right, you get the feedback. Okay, now my path is good. Now I just need to rotate my right forearm a little more for a right-handed golfer.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
put those two together, now you're starting to hit those shots without any side spin, and they're going to go further. You're going to hit your 5 iron another 10 yards further.
When I set them up in a closed stance, they've got a chance to get their club face left of their path as a right-hander, which means the ball's going to draw. And I just had a Zoom online lesson I did before we recorded this, and the student was coming over the top, and I had their numbers, and they were swinging as a right-hander too far left. And I put them in that drill, and all of a sudden they saw the club coming down right on plane, and he couldn't believe how good his swing looked.
You
And
wrapped
so
up the lesson in
I'm
5 minutes, right?
always, what's that?
You wrapped up the lesson in 5 or 10 minutes.
No, I spent 30 minutes doing that.
It took, yeah, it takes longer. That's a hard thing to do though when you're on the range, but that's a good thing. I never use the closed stance. That's a good start right there where you close your stance a little. It helps facilitate that club going to the right.
Exactly. And it's contorted your body where it's really hard to rotate it. See, the body rotation is what throws the club out over the top of the plane. And I think I have a video coming out pretty soon about, that's the big mistake is you turn early from the top. That was my mistake when I was going bad is I was trying to rotate more and I turned early from the top. The club got steep and now I could hit it anywhere.
Yeah.
And so that when that club gets steep coming down from the top, uh, you're not going to find a happy ending where the ball is hit solid at your target.
I mean, it's like when you look at Rory McIlroy and you look from behind him when he takes it and he's got the club fairly high at the top, but then it kind of transition and he gives it that little loop where he starts
Right.
coming from the inside. And then if he wants to hit the fade, he can just keep it there and come down a little more from the outside. But with that driver, when he gets his hands high and then he starts coming from the inside, I mean, it's hard to beat him when he's hitting it out there 320 consistently.
And in the fairway. Where Rory gets off, and I see this with amateurs all the time, is he sets up with his shoulders too open. And now he's got it when he comes after he makes that move and comes down, the club head's too far behind him. And then he can block it, and then he gets tired of blocking and he flip hooks it. But if he starts with his shoulders more square, now the club is in front of him coming into the ball. It's not behind him. And then he's Rory. He shoots
Well,
64 on Sunday at Bay Hill and wins.
and it looks like when he does start to set up and they're behind Rory, it does look like he's always aiming down the left side. But it looks like what he's added in the last year is that little thing where he tilts his left shoulder up a little higher and tries to square it up. So maybe
Yeah.
that's what he's working on, try to get the lines a little better.
But you set up with your shoulders open, and that can mess up the rest of your swing. It's pretty amazing. And you know this as well as anybody how important your setup is. And so that's another thing we work on a lot with people is setup, getting your lines good, getting set up correctly. And then if you're set up correctly, you got a chance to be an athlete now and swing the golf club and hit the golf ball.
Yeah, and they get into little trends too. Even pros before they would, use those alignment sticks on every day when they're practicing, we would get off a little bit like that because we didn't have those, several years ago. We would have each other look or you'd set a 4-iron down on the tee maybe, but it
Your
was
umbrella.
whatever was 3 feet long and straight, whatever you could find. Yeah.
Right.
And try to keep your lines together. But I don't think we paid as much attention as the guys do now because it seems like nearly everyone that you watch on tour now has a perfect setup.
Well, the other thing, they've got flight scopes and TrackMans and Forsyth out there now. They know if it's 45 degrees, how far the ball's flying. We'd have to kind of guess that the first few holes and figure it out. And then you play in Phoenix and you got frost delays and it's cold in those first 5, 6 holes. And as it warms up, you start hitting it further. And those guys knew how far it was going because they've got their launch monitors on the range. And it's just technology, but hey, everybody has it now. We didn't have it in our day, so it was a fair playing field, but it definitely has helped people be a lot smarter as far as knowing how far their ball's going to go and knowing if they're swinging a little too far left or a little too far to the right. They're a little out of their patterns, and it's pretty cool that they can tune themselves up. But still, the interesting thing is a TrackMan, FlightScope, or Foresight, they can't tell you what to do to fix the numbers. They just report the numbers.
They just report the bad news.
You need somebody there to tell you the easy little thing to change those numbers. And as you're talking about somebody coming over the top of it as a right-hander swinging too far left with an open face, what do they got to do? What do they got to feel to change that to get the path and face where they want it?
Mm-hmm.
So, Donnie, Ryder Cup, Keegan Bradley, captain, has filled out his team. Luke Donald has filled out his team. We know who's going to be playing at Bethpage the end of this month. So, a lot of good players. I think they picked more live guys on the European tour. They picked Rahm and Terrell Hatton. We just have one, Bryson DeChambeau. He actually made the team, top 6. And Brooks Koepka even admitted, I really haven't been playing well enough to be picked. I thought that was fair on his part, but still, a lot of great players. I think the chemistry is big in the Ryder Cup, Donnie. I think who do they pair together? Scotty Scheffler and Sam Burns stay together almost every week out on the PGA Tour. They rent a house. That seems to me to be a pairing that they'd probably want to put together.
They're gonna. I think they're gonna continue with that. I think, and I mean what a great pairing that is for Sam to look up and say, oh, I'm paired with Scotty. Okay, that works. I can do that tomorrow. I'm available tomorrow too if Scotty wants to play. And that's the tricky part, the chemistry. But I think it's evolved over the years. Now the captains look at some of the success, specifically that Paul Azinger had, and they realize how important that is. Like they remember the year Tiger played with Phil and it didn't work at all.
Right.
So now I think they're fine tuning it a little better. The momentum is there. You get a place like Bethpage that the guys know a little bit about. I mean, I played the first Open there back in 2000 or whenever it was, 2001. The guys don't know the course. The Europeans probably know it as well as the Americans. So it's a fairly neutral site, but it's an American style course where you got to bomb it. It's out in front of you. The greens will be slick. We're going to have the home course advantage with the fans. Hopefully things are civilized up there, most of the days. And I think the momentum is going to be key, where I think the U.S. probably has a little bit of an edge being on local turf. Some great players, Scotty Scheffler leading the team. But if the Europeans can get off to a little bit of a quick start the first day, Tommy Fleetwood's playing amazing. Those guys, it's hard to look at the two teams and think that one team has an advantage on talent, because they're both stacked with talent. So could be the way they start. Could be the way they start out the first day.
Well, we get to pick whether it's foursomes or best ball, in the first match. So we get to pick that. I really feel, obviously you want to pick guys that are playing well, but Bethpage is a big, brutal golf course. I remember that 2001 Open, the 10th hole, guys weren't even driving it, getting it in the fairway on that hole. I remember Nick Price teed off and he was in the rough, couldn't carry to the fairway.
I'll tell you a story about. I played that. I started out on 10 in the morning and it's raining, playing with Jerry Kelly. I clock one right down the middle. I'm all excited. Got one in the fairway because that's a long hole. 11 coming back. 12 is ridiculous. 470 par 4. So that was an incredibly tough start, the first couple holes. I'm walking down the little walkway there that's about 5 feet wide, and I'm looking for the third ball in the fairway. I don't see it. I said, Marshall, where's the third one? He points down. It's there. And I get down about 3 feet from the ball, and I'm like, where? And then he gets down like a foot from it. He goes right there. I didn't even get it to the fairway. I'm like 3 feet from the fairway. Got to hit 9-iron out, make bogey on the first hole, shoot. End up, I think, like 9 over for the tournament. Go out with my father-in-law that night. I'm waiting for my daughter to call and say whether we made the cut or not, and I haven't heard from her, so I'm thinking, it looks like we're just going to miss it. We had a bottle of Chianti with some Italian food, and we're getting ready to order another bottle, and Bob Tway comes in, and he's soaking wet. I said, how'd you go? He said, 9 over. I'm like, I don't guess it's going to make it, huh? And he goes, no, oh, no, we're making the cut. I'm like, really? I said, waiter, X that second bottle. I was, and it just barely got in and stuff. So, yeah, Gerard Smith was caddying for me that week. My good friend, remember Gerard from up in Long Island. Got to play all 4 days.
I think Keegan really wanted to pick guys that could move the ball too in the 6 picks. You had to hit it. I think that's maybe why Brian Harmon didn't get picked. He's not that long.
That's a good point.
So you got to have guys that can move it because it's a big American style golf course. They're probably going to have the rough high because that always favors the Americans over the Europeans. And I don't know what else they'll do in the course setup. But hey, it's going to be electric. I mean, it's New York. We got the U.S. Open going on this weekend. The finals of the U.S. Open there in New York. So these fans are electric up there. You know how it is. You've played at Westchester and you played the Open there in 2001. I mean, they get into it.
Yeah, maybe a little too much, but
yes. they might have 2 bottles of Chianti.
They might get a little carried away up there. I wouldn't doubt it, but there'll be a lot of excitement. It's, I expect it to be very close this year.
Yeah, it will. And I just hope that people behave like you say. And I just think it's, I'm just happy, that hopefully it's something really good for golf. And that's really what the intention was of these matches. And like you said, both sides have some people on their teams that are playing some really great golf right now.
Yeah. It'll be fun to watch. I like watching Bryson these days. Sam Burns playing great. Of course, Scotty will be ready. Some of the younger guys that maybe first year, they're pretty scrappy though. You get some of these guys that are playing well at their first Ryder Cup. I'm not going to be too worried about them.
Right. Now they're tested. We saw what Ludwig Oberg did he was just fresh out of college in Paris a couple years ago and played extremely well in that Ryder Cup where they kicked the Americans' butts. But Donnie, been great having you on the show. If somebody's looking to live in a nice community here in the Central Florida area, you're the guy. You know the golf courses, you played them all, and they can find you at donniehammond.com. But Donnie, always great to catch up with you, my friend.
I enjoyed it, Larry. Good luck, and I'll see you out at the Ritz one of these days.
Well, thanks for watching the Larry Rinker Golf Podcast. Till next time, keep swinging.